Let's get more now on those warnings that nearly 250,000 vulnerable adults in England and Wales aren't being offered the support of an appropriate adult while in police custody. The Home Secretary Theresa May says the situation is unacceptable and will review the recommendations from the report. Well, let's speak now to Chris Bath, Chief Executive of the National Appropriate Adult Network, the charity which carried out that report commissioned by the Home Secretary. Chris, welcome to you. Why is there such a shortage then of appropriate adults?
Well, quite simply, back in the 1980s, somebody very sensibly made the rule that police officers had to secure an appropriate adult for a mentally vulnerable adult. Unfortunately, there was no corresponding legislation around ensuring someone was responsible for actually providing them. So that's distinct from appropriate adults for children, where there's a requirement on the police, but also youth offending teams legally have to ensure an appropriate adult's available for a child, but nobody's responsible for adults.
So effectively it's fallen through a gap?
Yeah, for about 30 years.
Incredible. So what's it going to take to undo this, to make this situation right? I
mean, the first step's been made, which is for the first time in 3 decades, the Home Secretary's looked under the stone to see, what's there, which is fantastic. The critical thing now is that we need to make sure there are appropriate adult schemes organised in every single part of the country, and it would seem like around half of England and Wales doesn't have that provision at the moment. So there's going to have to be time, effort and a little bit of money invested in making sure that that happens.
So in the areas where there aren't schemes that are running quite effectively, police have someone who is vulnerable in custody. They don't have an appropriate adult. What does that mean? Does it mean the person is effectively stuck in custody for longer than they should be?
Yeah, it will absolutely extend custody periods. The police have to spend, in some cases, 5 or 6 hours trying to identify someone to be an appropriate adult, and sadly in some cases the word appropriate might not be particularly appropriate, and we've seen cases of custody sergeants, police officers ending up just asking members of the public randomly who are kind of local to come in off the street and play that role. And obviously there's a real risk if an important safeguard is, if you like, there on paper but it's not there in reality.
If a vulnerable person has legal representation, is being talked to by police officers who are aware of their issues, is it always essential, in your opinion, that they absolutely need an appropriate adult with them?
Well, the first thing to note is that solicitors are not mandatory. You may well not get one. In fact, you're offered it. Many people, both children and mentally vulnerable adults, have lots of issues with it, saying yes to having a solicitor. Sometimes they'll think it's expensive and it's free. Sometimes they'll think that it shows that they're guilty. And actually, so part of the appropriate adult role, and it's just a part, is overcoming some of those objections. So it's making sure people understand their rights and they can actually use them. And the appropriate adult role in the interview part of the process is actually facilitating communication between police officers, between solicitors. They can be the specialist understanding some of the communication challenges, for instance with somebody with autism or a learning disability.
Okay, Chris Bath, good to talk to you, Chief Executive of the National Appropriate Adult Network.